everybody. We're going to get started now. Just to let you know, we are Zooming this and we're recording it. So if you, the camera is like right here, just looking at me. So if you don't want the general public to, people won't see you, but they may ask you questions.
You're going to want to know what you see.
Well, we'll just like zoom in on, there's the crowd here. So I'm Diane Moxness. Do you, if you, we have a mic if we need one, or I'll, okay, I can try the mic. Okay, is that better? I'm now on the leash and I have to be in front of the camera and I run the machine. So we're like right on the edge of my technical abilities here. So I'm Diane Moxness. I am the coordinator for the Anchorage chapter of the American Pilgrims on the Camino, which is a national organization that helps support the enduring, losing words here, for the Camino in Spain. So we have monthly meetings, usually here at REI, and about every other month they're Camino related, but the Camino in Spain. And then every other month we have programs about walking in other places. So this is one of the other months, which is why we're talking about Norway and not Spain. So my husband and I did a hike and then a walk in Norway in July of 2023, unlike the slide that says 2024. So anyway, so I'm gonna talk about that adventure that we went on. We did a hike in the Jotunheimen National Park, and then we did a walk on the King's Road, which is south of there. And then I'm going to share some information about the pilgrim routes in Norway, which is called St. Olav's Way. We did not do that, but I gathered some information and I have some more information over there on the table. So if you have questions, let me know, interrupt me, but not too badly because I just got back from a trip and I'm seriously jet lagged. If you're online, Kathy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear okay? I think that's a thumbs up. Anyway, so to start off with, we went in July. My husband's family is from Norway, so we went, we've been there to visit his family before, but this was our first hiking trip. And we flew from here, Seattle to Reykjavik, and from Reykjavik to Oslo. And we did, first off, I'm trying to, all right, here we go. So we did a couple of days of sightseeing in Oslo, which is a wonderful town. First of all, let me ask, has anybody done any hiking in Norway here? You have? Oh, she's done hiking. Oh, excellent. All right. So full disclaimer, I can't pronounce anything. I can't do it in English, and I certainly can't do it in Norwegian. So I'm gonna like just point to words and you can figure out how to say them. So, so they have this wonderful opera house, fairly new, but it lasts like 15 years or so. So if you go to Oslo, you got to walk on the roof. It's like this wonderful architecture. So it's a cool place and wonderful views. And then their big sculpture park just outside of town is great. We were there during a monsoon. And then they have an island that's like full of museums. And this is the Fram, which is Amundsen's boat that he did the Northwest Passage in. I think the boat that he took to Antarctica got bushed, but this is cool. You can go on it. And on this island, we also went to the Folk Museum, which there are many of them around Norway, which are super cool. They took buildings from all over Norway in different places. So it's kind of like walking through all the states, provinces, whatever they call them there. And the buildings have been reconstructed. So this is old Oslo, and that's buildings from the Telemark area. So that's a super cool thing. They also have a Viking ship museum and the Kon-Tiki museum and the Maritime Museum, which was actually very interesting if you're into model boats. So anyway, from Oslo, we really came to go hiking. So so we left Oslo to take a hike up into the national park. The Jotunheimen National Park is known as, someone described it as the Yosemite of Norway. So what people think of the Lake District in England and the Yosemite in the US, the Norwegians think of the Jotunheimen Park there. So we did what we call credit card camping. We just like signed up online, paid the money, and they took care of everything. So it was like what you call a self-guided trip. So and my husband found this trip on Natural Adventure. I think they're a U.S. company in there, and they have self-guided trips all over the world. And so we saw this like mountains and King Road, and it's like, oh, this looks like this is a cool thing. So they fabulous job they did. When we got there, we realized that actually they just subcontracted with Jotunheimen Travel. And so this trip was a Jotunheimen Travel trip. And once we got into Norway, there was no mention of the Natural Adventure Company. But these guys did a great job. We got a whole bunch of stuff online from Natural Adventure, and then the note that says, when you get on the bus in Oslo, they will give you the rest of the information. And so we checked out the bus before we got there, and it's like, this is like the huge Greyhound bus station. And what are the odds that bus driver has our stuff? And he did. And then Jotunheimen Travel actually books the quote-unquote huts, which were really not huts, they were lodges, through the Norwegian Hiking Association. And so if you wanted to do this trip, you could do it all yourself, booking these places through the Norwegian Hiking Association. Speaking Norwegian or being able to read Norwegian would be helpful on negotiating their website. But it has some cool, it's a great website to go through. They have tons of huts and it's very interesting. But anyway, so that's how we arranged it, is that we did it all online. And it was flawless. So we started in Oslo down here. And like I said, we got on a bus at the bus station in Oslo and took a bus ride up to Bygden Lake. And they gave us a QR code, that they flashed, and the bus driver pointed his machine at the QR code and said, "Oh, Moxness, we have a packet for you," and handed us a packet with our maps and everything else that we needed. So yeah, everybody in Norwegian that we came across spoke English. So yeah, that was so we get to Bygden Lake, which was gorgeous. It was like, oh my God, it's like a Klukna lake with a lodge on it. And this was our first hut that we stayed in. So not to be confused with what was in our head of where we're going to be staying. So this was the room. It was very nice. This particular one, we had our own bathroom attached. And once we left Oslo, we didn't spend a dime on anything other than alcohol. Everything was taken care of, all the bus, everything. So it was sort of like, once you pay for a vacation like months ago, you just forget. So anyway, the first we get there, and the first day they had sort of an itinerary, and it was basically like move from one place to another. The next day you did a day hike, and then you moved to another place and did a day hike. So it was kind of nice. We weren't moving every day. I mean, we were walking every day, but we weren't packing up. But so we arrived in the afternoon, and they suggested that you hike up this little hill behind the hut. So we were like, okay, we got to stick with the agenda. So we started off, and it was, a nice little hike, and there was a surprising number of people on it. And this is where we discovered that the whole concept of switchbacks has not made it to Norway. So we discovered that the first day. And if you look at those big black clouds behind there, those were about 15 minutes away from us, so we didn't hike very far. So we decided, well, we've gone far enough. It's been a long day. We came from Oslo. Let's go back to the hotel and have dinner. So this was our dinner, and they have the best desserts there. So anyway, it was like a dining room fixed menu kind of deal. And the next day, we went and hiked up Bitterhorn, which is that peak in the background. So it's a day hike. It's probably about 6 miles. Rest stops, photo stops, lunch stops included. We were out and back in 6.5 hours. It was equivalent to hiking up Wolverine Peak. So it was very pretty. There was a surprising number of people on it, and sheep. And we found our first trail markers. So those red markers are how they mark trails in Norway. We get to the top, and there are 100 people on top of this mountain, many of them smoking, and nobody with hiking poles. It's like, I don't know about these guys. So anyway, this was the view that we got looking back. The lodge is kind of off to the right around the corner, but this is the view from the top there. So this is what we got to see for the next couple of days. And the mountains behind, that's where we're going up over those mountains into the next lake the next day. So we go back to the hotel for yet another great meal. So I'm showing these pictures because one of my good friends says, oh, you're going to Norway. They only have white food in Norway. So I took all these pictures of non-white food. So, but it's definitely a meat and potatoes kind of place. On here and all the rest of the places we stayed, it was the same deal. We got soup, we got a main course, and then we got a dessert, and vegetables were pretty much root vegetables. So if you're into salads, we didn't really see any. So the next day we get to start our hike. We start our hike by taking a boat trip on this like cutest little boat you've ever seen. It's the motor vessel Bitterhorn, and it's been operating twice a day up and down this lake since 1912. I think it stopped during World War II, but other than that, it just goes up and back. And we had tickets. We had a QR code on our itinerary, and they scanned it. And so we got on, and we got our first look at our other hikers, and we noticed that one, we were old enough to be all of their grandparents, and two is that they had these big honking leather over the ankle hiking boots, and we're in our trail runner shoes, and I'm thinking, well, they haven't got the message on light is better. And then, like later on in the day, I realized like I'm the one that didn't get the memo on the right shoe wear. So if you go into Norway, hiking boots are better than trail runners. So this is where we started here. That's where the lodge is, Bigden, the town of Bigden, which was like the 3 buildings you saw. The first day we kind of went up this little hill, and then the second day we went up that little hill, and then that day we took a 45-minute boat ride halfway down the lake to Torfino, or however you say that. We hiked up to the top of this valley, about 5 miles across the valley, and then down to the next lake. So that was our adventure for the day. Took us about 7.5 hours. It was about 2,000 feet up. I mean, from the lake up, and then 5 miles up. But the guidebook said easy flat walking. We need to have a word with the guidebook author, but and then 2,000 feet down. So we took the boat ride, and it was lovely weather that day. And then we arrived where we're getting off, and these are the first DNT, which is the Norwegian Hiking Association's huts. This was our first glimpse at these huts. We were staying in a regular hotel type place the night before, and so these are sort of unmanned cabins that if you're a member of the association, you can use. And if you can't really see, but on either side of the windows, it looks like shutters, but those are actually solar panels. So there's no, at this point, you are seriously off the grid, but they did have lights, outhouses and things, but so we snooped around there. So these huts, the DNT cabins, they have over 580 of them across Norway. And they come in 3 different types. There's unattended cabins, which are usually smaller. They'll have bunks, cooking equipment, usually wood fire. And I went online to try to rent one just to see, I could see how much they cost. And it looked like they were about $30 a night if you just go on and sign. If you're a member, a DNT member, they cannot turn you away from a cabin. So, you have the right to stay there even if you don't have a reservation. You like sleep on the floor or in a, outbuilding or something. And then they have what they call self-service cabins, which are kind of they're a little bit bigger and they are stocked with food. And then you just record what food you ate when you were there and then pay for it. I don't know if you pay for it there, they bill you, I don't know how that works, but there is food in them, and they said in the busy months, they'll often have a caretaker. And then their last kind of hut is called serviced cabins, which in my world, I would call a lodge. And these are, there'll be a staff, you check in, they have 3 meals a day, dinner, breakfast that's a typical Norwegian smorgasbord spread, and then you take from breakfast, you pack your own lunch out of that. And they'll have linens to rent. So you can use your own sleeping bag or rent some from there. So anyway, those are the cabins, quote unquote, cabins or huts. So back to the trail, I don't know how to say that. Anyway, this is the trail we're on. So we started from the lake here and just started climbing. Just like I said, they don't really go in for switchback, so it was 2,000 feet straight up. But very well marked, big red T's everywhere. And then we came across a sign that is the edge of the national park. That's announcing that you're in the national park. When we took the bus ride up to Bigden, we stopped at a place where people bus kind of terminal. So we had to stop for about 20 minutes and went to the building, and they had a information booth, like tourist information booth there, and somebody got off our bus and was asking, or somebody driven up and was asking about hiking in the national parks. And so she was giving him maps and stuff, and he goes, well, do you need a permit to camp? And she looked at him like they were crazy. It's like, why would you need a permit to go into a national park? He was like, oh, okay. Well, are there any rules? And she was like, thought about it. She said, don't pick the flowers. She said, but if you really like the flowers, just don't pull them up by the roots. And we're like, wow, that's like, John, you have a lot more rules at your park. So anyway, we got up, we're now officially in the national park. And we get up to the top, and here's the flat, easy walking, and it is absolutely gorgeous. But the walking was 5 miles of rocks. And the trail was, it was marked, but it really wasn't a trail. It was like more of a route. So it was like rock hopping and stream crossing. It wasn't hard. It was just, you had to be watching your feet the whole time. But it was this big glacial valley, which was really, really pretty. So you can see this is what we're walking over, and there's my completely inappropriate shoes for this event. But it was pretty. We had lots of the same flowers we see here. And there's our sandwich. The tour company gave us this waxed, wax kind of wrapping to wrap our lunches in. It was great stuff. So now I use it when I go hiking now. There's our sandwich that we made at lunchtime, and the rocks we walked over. And it was this like great glacial moraine. My husband was a geologist in a previous life, so he went like crazy over this perfect round moraine and glaciers. And anyway, it was just a beautiful hike. And then we got to the edge and we could see our destination. So this is the next lake over. And we can see right down there is the next hut we're going to stay in. So it was like, wow. And the day after we hiked up that, you can see a valley to the right. That's the foreshadowing. That's where we went the next day. So we got to the edge and it's like, look down between your feet and you see the trail. So it was basically straight down through the rocks. So it was, I didn't cry once, but it did occur to me to do so. So it was a little tough going down, and was really glad it was a nice day because it would have been a little sketchy if it was raining. So at the end, after doing multiple stream crossings, it was nice to see like a really nice big bridge. And we could look back when we got around to the lodge, look back at where we came from. So this is where we started from. So that was like the rock face that we dropped down, and then we kind of walked down that ridge that's right in front of the shadow. And when we looked at it, it was like, well, it doesn't look that far from here. You know, it's only this big. But we get to the hut, the next hut, which is definitely not a hut. It's more of a lodge, but it's the oldest hut in their system. It was built in 1871, and that building on the left, that is the original hut that you can still stay in, but you're more like just sleeping on the ground in that building. But it has 119 beds, and I think pretty much it was full when we were there. End of July is a real popular time. And from what I can tell from the website, I think it's about $85 to $150 a night to stay there, depending on whether you have a single room or if you're a member or not a member. But we had our own room, and we were told that we would be staying in a bunk room. That was what our expectation was. So I was thinking Camino, but we had our own room. There was a communal shower and bathroom that was in the next building, and the toilets were like pit toilets, but as you can see, they're very nice. But it was, in the next building. Anyway, well, they're nice rooms, much, we thought we were going to be, in a room with 50 of our closest friends, but it was nice. The place had a big dining room. It was all communal meals. Again, soup, main course, dessert, and then you give them your thermos at night with a little thing to tell you how much, what you want in it, and they'll fill it. So you have hot tea or hot coffee or cocoa for the next day. And Norwegians apparently all travel with big thermoses when they hike. But they also had like a game room and a big drawing room. This is like when we left, which was after most people had left. So this was empty. And I was wondering, I wonder how much gets left behind every time. But it was great. And the shoes off, and any of the buildings, you had to leave your shoes at the door. And there was just like a mound of leather hiking boots. So, like I said, they have double rooms like we were in. They have bunk rooms. They had these teepees that were super cool that a lot of families would stay in them. And then they also had tent sites. So this lake we're at, there is a road at the other end. And so a lot of families will take the boat, and there's a cute little boat that goes up and down that lake. They'll take the boat there, walk in, set up a tent, and then just do hikes, and could use the facilities if they want. A lot of people were cooking out, that were staying in tents, were doing their own cooking. Some people were eating in the restaurants. So you could do it either way. And so the next day, the itinerary suggests that we hiked up to the top of that peak, which is about another 2,000-foot climb. And, we're old, and it was like, let's go for plan B. This is like a really nice looking valley. So we just hiked up the valley for the day and had lunch and turned around and hiked back. And And that was pretty, we saw views from the top of this. Some other hikers showed us the views from the top of that, and we were a little bit jealous that we didn't do it because it was beautiful, but we had a nice day. So this was the route we took the day before, and then there's the hut, and this is the valley that we went up. And it was nice, it was beautiful. Flowers, same flowers we have here. I mean, a lot of times you could swear you were in Alaska looking at these views. So the next day after that, we were going to the next hut. So we started here, and this one, we went up kind of next valley over, same, not quite as high, climb up to a plateau, cross it, and then drop down to the end of Bigden Lake that we started out like 3 days before. So we got up in the morning. We were just carrying day packs. We had them shuffle our packs. So in the morning we walked down the lake for about a half a mile, and there was a dock where the boat would come to. So we carried our little bags down and left them when they give us a tag to tell them where to send the bags next. And we saw them again. And then packed up. And so this is, in the morning, it's just this mass of very fit young Norwegians. These all folks were day hiking. You can tell the people that were backpacking because they had humongous packs. So we were feeling old and wimpy when we were getting ready in the morning. But so we started up. This is looking back down at the lake that we were staying in. So you can see the valley it's a very gradual climb up. And again, the trail was wonderfully marked. I think if you got lost hiking in here, you'd have to be really working at it. So it was nice. We got on the top and flat, and you could swear you were in Hatcher Pass. You know, it looked a lot like that. Lots of stream crossings. I managed to fall in one, but to my credit, I actually jumped into it so I wouldn't fall on my face. But so I did quite a bit of taking my shoes off and walking through the streams, because after that it was like, I don't really do this well. Most of those guys looked at me like I was crazy. It's like, why don't you just walk through it with your leather hiking boots? And saying, well. So anyway, it was very pretty. There was quite a few other people doing it. We got to this rather large stream, and we're really glad to see a bridge. And I was really glad I didn't fall off that bridge. And then we get to the end of the valley, and we can see the lake that we drop down to. So we're back to Bigden Lake. It was steep but muddy. It wasn't rocky, so it was a little bit more manageable. And then once we got there, this is a lake that at this end there is a road, so there's a lot of summer houses there. So we passed these like oh so cute Norwegian summer houses, and you can kind of see the trail. It's sort of rocky, big rocks to avoid the mud, but it was, doable. And we get to the next quote unquote hut, which was very nice and apparently very famous for the food here and the hospitality of the lady that runs it, who sang to us during dinner. It was quite nice. So it was very nice. It was very friendly and very cozy, and we had bathroom across the hall as opposed to in the next building, so that was nice.
Kind of temperatures.
It was like summertime here. I'm saying like 60s, probably low 60s. I mean, I brought a whole lot more clothes than I wore. It was raining off and on, so that was a little cool. So, but yeah, no, it was like perfect hiking weather when it wasn't raining. I was just wearing a hiking shirt. And so when we arrived here, right when we arrived, the motor vessel Bigden was arriving, the one that we took to start, and it had our bags on it. So while we did this, our bags did this. It took the boat to the end of the lake going that way. It was put on basically like a county bus that went back to the lodge that we started our journey on. They put it back on this boat, and it went down the lake. So our bags had just as much fun as we did. So anyway, they appeared, and so we spent the night, had a nice dinner, and the next day took this bus down about 30 minutes south, where we're gonna not hike, but we're gonna go walking. So we realized that in all of our stuff, we didn't have a ticket to get on the bus. So we said, we figured, oh, well, they forgot to give us the QR code or something, and how much could it be? We'll just pay for it. We get on the bus and we're like, well, we're supposed to, and he's like, get on the bus. It's like, well, maybe they don't charge for these buses. Or he just figured we were tourists. And so we got on the bus. It was quite a nice bus, and arrived at this town, and there's a van to meet us. And it's like, wow, that was easy. Because we were a little unclear what happened next after we got off the bus. So he is a nice young man who, when he's not driving a bus, is leading groups of people to go walking on the glacier. People will come here because you can access glaciers a little bit higher than where we were. And he just, they put crampons and harness on him, and they walk around the glacier, and that's what he would do. So anyway, he gave us kind of a running commentary on the history of the King's Road, which is what we're going to be walking on. So he dropped us at this trailhead and said that he'd take our bags back to the hotel. And he gave us his cell phone and said, when you get to this point, he showed us on the map, call me. And you'll be 20 minutes from the road, and it will take me 20 minutes to get there. So I'm like, okay. So this is the King's Road, which was built in 1794. It was kind of a horse path, and the king, whatever, during that time period, decided that there needed to be a road between Oslo and Bergen. So from East Norway to West Norway, to take the mail and to take people in like horse carriages. So he had this road built. They have been restoring that road, and so right now there are 60 miles of it that have been restored as a biking path. And so what we did is that we just did 2 sections, the ones that are in the box. We went over the high point, and then the next day we did one was lower down. And I'm going to back up. You can see at this trailhead that sort of kiosk type thing. They were like all the way down the trail, kind of just pointing out, just pointing out interesting things and the history of it. So it was well marked. The red tees were gone, and now we had like this cool little carriage with a crown on top. So you're on the King's Road. And it was walking, not hiking. This is what it looked like. It was more like walking in England. It was just easy, flat. Trail runners were perfectly appropriate for this, but it was very pretty. So these were the kind of things you'd see on the kiosks. They'd have one side in Norwegian, one side in English, and they talked about different things, and they had artwork from the time when they were using it, which was really pretty cool. And every once in a while they'd had a map. I could never figure out their maps. I mean, I don't know what that was. I couldn't figure out where I was, but you couldn't really get lost because it was like a road. So it was, not the dramatic peaks of the Jotunheimen, which is where I think like all of Norway's big peaks are in that national park, but it was still really, really beautiful. And just, you could see towns out in the distance, but right around where we were, it was very, you're out in the wilderness there. And I think we only saw one other group of people walking here, and they weren't walking, they were actually biking. They were mountain bikers from Oslo, and they come up, and one of them their in-laws had a cabin nearby, and he'd come up and go mountain biking. And surprising that his mountain bike, exact same bike that my bike. I'm like, oh my God, it's same color, same, anyway. So Scott really got market penetration, but he said it was a really great mountain biking, and you can rent bikes there if you're a biker. But you can kind of see the old road where Mike is standing up there. And still like great views. And so we called, actually, let me go back. Yeah, this was the point, the high point before we dropped down to the road. And this is where we called the guy. And there he was waiting for us when we got there. And he took us back to our next hut, which was this beautiful lodge and really nice rooms. They weren't very big, they weren't full at all. So they're like, oh, we're gonna give you a suite. It's like, oh, how nice. So it was like a cabin that we had. So we had this room, and we had a living room and a kitchen and a dining room, which was like way overkill for what we needed because we were eating in their dining room. So, and then the driver said, well, we'll pick you up at 9 o'clock the next morning. So the next morning, it's 9 o'clock, actually another woman picked us up and dropped us here. So this is a stave church, which I said it was built in 1180, but that's when the trees were cut because they could tell by the rings. Between 1130 and 1350, 1,000 of these churches were built all over Norway. And I believe that they have these churches in a couple other places were built, like I think Romania had some. But now there's only 28 of them remaining in Norway. One of them, I don't know how in the world they did this, but they took it apart, and it's in the Folk Museum in Oslo that I showed earlier on. I showed that we went to the Folk Museum. They have one not nearly as large and not nearly as well preserved, but this was unbelievable building. And you could go inside. It was a little dark. The pictures were a little dark. And it's amazing. So these were very unique to Norway. And it was sort of this was back when Norway would have been Catholic. So this would have been a Catholic church at the time.
What does stave mean?
I actually don't know.
Oh,
Wood? Yeah, yeah. So near there was a museum, and so we went looking. So they had like little scale models, so you could see how it was built and information on it. And you can see the map. All those yellow dots are all where their churches used to be, and the red ones are the ones that are remaining. So I think it would be like a cool trip. It's like a destination thing. Go to Norway and visit all of the churches. Stave churches. So from there, from the stave church, we just kind of walked south, or walked west, I should say, along. And this part of the road was just, through farmlands, and it was like just a beautiful sunny day, and it was very idyllic. Part of the place is actually because we went through a narrow pass. I'm not sure I have a picture of this. You can kind of see that during World War II, when the Nazis occupied Norway, they built gun placements throughout this ravine that you're walking. You can kind of see to the top picture, and so you can see old gun placements and things. And there was plaques telling us about it, but you can see how the road was built up here, and then down below the rocks. It was just a huge amount of engineering went into this process. And there in some old buildings that you could poke around and look at them along the way. But this part of the King's Road is famous for the next section, which was this just amazing engineering feat of going. It was too steep for wagons to go down, of course, and so they made this sort of serpentine to go down through there. And I'm looking at it, it's like, see, they did know how to do switchbacks, But anyway, this was just one of the most amazing pieces of engineering I've ever seen. It was great. So, we got there, we went back and, took a bus back to Oslo, and that was the end of that part of the trip. It was really nice. It wasn't you can certainly go in the Jotunheimer and do weeks of backpacking or hiking from hut to hut. We just did a tiny bit of it. In the Kings Road, we probably, of the 60 miles, we probably did 20 of it. So, but it would make a nice like 5-day trip to go from one end to the other. There are parts that you are walking on the road, so it's not always in these beautiful places. But that would be, if you're looking for a small, not really like mountain hiking type trip, this would be really interesting. And I have like a map over there and information if you're interested. So after that, we went to, we were trying to figure out how to get north from where we were, but it was one of those, you can't get there from here. So it was like a lot easier just to go take the bus that we paid for on our trip back to Norway. And then we flew up north to go visit my husband's family in Stjørdal. And there's the guys. So that's Mike and all of his second cousins. And they look surprisingly similar. And just as a side, my son's girlfriend was raised in Valdez, and when she was in high school, she did a year abroad in Norway, and she stayed in Stjørdal. And so when we were there, we went and met her host mother, who was just gushing over the fact that her Elizabeth was, had found a guy from Stjørdal. It's like, well, he's not actually from Stjørdal, but anyway, yeah, that was kind of a fun thing. And of course, her husband went to college with one of Mike's cousins, so it's all small world. And so one of the things they did is that we went on a little sightseeing trip to Trondheim, which was nearby. So we went around the cities with 2 of his cousins, and their wives brought us, and that was just like the clown show. The 3 of them were just too much fun. And one of the big sights to see in Trondheim is the cathedral there, which is absolutely beautiful. Some of the creepiest carvings I have ever seen on the church, as you can see on the left. I don't know like what the guy's doing, holding 3 heads, but just doesn't seem really Christian to me. But anyway, beautiful church. We got there, they had a concert, so we had a good time. But the thing about the cathedral here is that it is the terminus of St. Olaf's Way. So this is like the cathedral in Santiago is the Camino in Spain. This is what it is to St. Olaf's. It's like all the ones in there. So I was pretty excited to see that. So this is another option for hiking, is to hike one of these pilgrimages that goes to Trondheim. And like the Camino, there are many routes. There's not just one pilgrim route in Norway. There are actually 9 routes that all end in Trondheim. Probably one of the more famous ones is one that starts in Sweden and so you walk across Sweden and then walk across Norway and get to Trondheim. But it's like this far. Well, it's like the skinny part. So, but anyway, they say it takes about 30 days. If you're a Camino person, you're familiar with the Primitivo, which is the first Camino, the one that when King Alphonse II went from Oviedo to Santiago. This was the first one that Olaf Parkinson, the Viking, who had been ousted out of his job, and I think he was in Denmark or someplace. And so he, in 1030, he walked this route to reclaim his throne. So that was the start of this pilgrimage. They reopened it in 2013. And they have guidebooks and places to stay along the way. So that's an option if you want to hike there. The other one that we were familiar with, and I thought that was the only one, is the one that went from Oslo to Trondheim. And when we first did a Camino in 2013, we met a woman from Norway who did this to train for the Camino, and we're thinking, walking across Norway seems like kind of a big deal as a training ground. But it's the most popular one. During the Middle Ages, it was like the major road through Norway. It's 643 kilometers, so it's not quite as long as the Camino, but they said it takes about minimum of 32 days to do it. Like I said, we have the guidebook I have over here because we looked at doing this before we decided to do the one in Spain. At the time, in 2013, you had to camp out. You couldn't always count on a place to stay. I think that's different now. But I was like, yeah, I don't want to carry a tent and a sleeping bag. So anyway, we didn't do it. So I pinched some pictures off the internet. So this is kind of pictures along the, kind of some mountain hiking, some rural hiking, some road walking, cute little towns to go through. It looks lovely. And it's similar to walking a Camino. You get a pilgrim's passport, just like you do on the Camino. They have stamps along the way that you get. You get a diploma at the end. You have to have walked 1,000 kilometers to get the diploma. They think they're sort of doing a little trading of ideas or whatever, but and then it ends, and there's a pilgrim office in the cathedral in Trondheim. They also said there's like 12 pilgrim offices around Norway that you could pick up a passport or pick up information. But with this, the one in the right-hand corner is my picture when we were there. I was like, oh, look, a pilgrim office, Mike's like, no, you're not on Camino time, we're on Norway time. But anyway, it's similar, a lot of similarities between the Camino and Spain. So if you're interested in more information, this is like, 10 minutes on Google for me, so I'm sure there are many, many more resources, but there's the Pilgrim Center has a website on the top, and it has all information on different routes and interactive maps that you can click on, play where to stay. They have what looks like a pretty informative Facebook group called Hiking Along Olaf's, however you say that word. But on Facebook, and there is a lot of, good information. Somebody had posted, if you're walking this summer, be aware, here are some national holidays and some festivals that are going on in different places that might make getting places to stay difficult. So they have good practical information. And also some people's like, hey, I've got a place, I'm renting a place here. If you're interested, if you need a place to stay, here's how you, reserve a room. And I got the feeling this is not a walk that you could just wing it like you can on the Camino, that you need to kind of put things ahead of time. A lot of pictures I saw, people doing this had full backpacks. So I think a lot of people camp it, which is something that's, difficult to do or not encouraged on the Camino is, staying in tents along the way. But I think here you can do it. And I think the rules are here that you can camp anywhere as long as it's not within like 100 yards of a building. I think that's the rules. Better to check that out. And then I found a place called Nordic Pilgrim that looks like it's like a business that will do your arranging, sort of like Camino Ways, or I can't remember, there's a bunch of them that do the Camino, but you can go on there and you can click on, reserve cabins, or, they'll arrange for bag transfers and things like that. So, so there's, good, if you're interested in that, which I think would be really a fascinating walk to do, there's some resources. And that is kind of the end of it. Like I said, this is Anchorage Chapter American Pilgrims on the Camino. Here's what we do. I should have read this beforehand. Fostering the enduring tradition of the Camino de Santiago in Spain. So this is my email address, anchorage@americanpilgrims.org. If you email that, you get me, because I'm kind of a one-man band when it comes to this chapter. And here's our programs that we have set out in 2 weeks. Jerry's gonna be talking about Camino, two Caminos, the two routes that he did through the Pyrenees. So it started in France, went through the Pyrenees, ended up on the Camino Francés, and then walked backwards to the starting point. So that should be it. And he said he saw 14 people in 2 weeks or something. So it's a Camino less traveled. We're going to do a Camino 101, how to walk the Camino in March. April, we're going to switch gears. We're going to not be walking. We're not going to be in Spain. We're going to be in New York biking. So Kevin and Mary just did this trip this summer. It looked really cool. Ended up, it's a really nice trip. May, we haven't got anything scheduled yet, but June we're going to do our popular second annual Camino Stories, which was our most popular thing that we did last year, which was like, we had 6 people selling 8-minute stories or 8 people telling 6-minute stories. But anyway, just people giving little vignettes of the Camino, so that should be fun. And Carla, hopefully over there, is going to do a Camino 101 later in the fall. So we tried to do one before the spring. People seem to like to walk the Camino in the spring and walk it in the fall. So we tried to do a Camino 101. Anyway, there is a clipboard going around, a blue clipboard. If anybody wants to be on our mailing list and isn't on our mailing list, please sign your name. And I promise not to spam you because I can hardly get it together to send one email out a month, which is what you'll get, is one email out a month that tells you what's going on. Let me see, we've got people, Jerry asked online, were mosquitoes a problem? And I do not remember any mosquitoes. I should ask Mike to go off mute and say, I don't remember any mosquitoes. So they were there, they weren't a big deal. I think there were kind of little gnatty things down by the water sometimes, but the rain might have, knocked them out of the sky too. So are these snakes? I don't think there were snakes in Norway. No snakes. Did you have snakes? Oh, I'm glad I did not know that. So no, we didn't see any snakes. Yeah.
Did you go to the Constitution Museum and look for it?
And the question was, did I go to the Kon-Tiki Museum? We didn't this time, but we have in the past gone to it. Yeah, the raft is there. We were running out of time, and so we got a little carried away on the prom. We were like, that was super cool. So any other questions? Yeah. The question was this for people online. What were the nationalities of the other hikers? I'd say 80–90% of them were Norwegian. We saw one group, we only saw one group of Americans, and they were some kind of outward bound torture program. They were from Florida, the kids. They were from all over. The kids that we talked to before, like up and over, they were from Florida, and we did see them again. One young lady in the office using their satellite phone, weeping into some bird parents. I think it was a little much, but they were moving fast, and they had big packs, and they were like high school kids. We talked to 2 other guys who were using the same travel company, and they were from Belgium, I think. Something, one of those flat countries. It could have been the Netherlands. But overwhelmingly, the people we saw were families from Norway and young, fit Norwegians, and maybe some Germans sprinkled in there that looked like Norwegians. But everybody spoke English, but around the dining room, it was definitely Norwegian that was being spoken. It was like anywhere you travel, you just pull out the Alaska card and you're a celebrity, so. Yeah. We did not see horses, but when I was looking up for St. Olaf's Way, some resources, I found a place that said you could rent, and they would rent you horses. which would be like really fun to do. That they're like, yeah, we take care of taking care of them and transport and getting you, you know. So if you know, if I could find it in 5 minutes on Google, I think, you know, you could do it. But I did not, and I don't, yeah, we just didn't see any, and I don't know enough about horses to know, especially in the Jotunheimer, if that was a possibility, but I'm thinking not. The trails, and Liz, my son's partner, when I was telling her about the trails, and she said, yeah, that's like Norwegian trails, straight up, flat, straight down. You know, that's, and I think the straight up would kind of get the horses, but the King's Road, I think you could do it. You could definitely do horses on those. In fact, it was built for horses. So, any other questions? Oh, yep. How similar to last was at daylight? I think it was about the same. We were a little bit further north, so you know, we were on the sort of downward slide of daylight, but July is pretty much like June, so I think it was about the same, maybe a little more. You know, it was light when we got up. You know, we didn't really kind of deal with dark too much. I'm trying to think, like in Oslo, like going out to dinner, coming back, it was still light out. Yeah. So I don't know, you know, it was up when I got up, so didn't really pay attention. Any other questions? Great, well, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you at a next, at another program. And we'll see if there's any other, oh, somebody says, what type of shoes waterproof? I wear Solomon waterproof shoes that really aren't waterproof if the water goes in like over the top of your shoes. So if I were to go back and do this, I would get myself a pair of beefier hiking boots. Definitely boots over shoes, and definitely waterproof. Great. Oh, thank you.